Hi, everybody. It's a Tuesday afternoon. How you doing? Sweating to death? Yeah, I know what you mean. I wanted to show you this. Our 3 o'clock update this afternoon. This is our heat advisory in effect. I've been trying to superimpose the counties over this, and it's not working very well for me here, but give you a general idea. Here's Richland County, Richland, Lexington, Aiken County, Kershaw County, then you get to the Charleston area here. Right, so this is 94 Columbia, officially at the airport. Dew point at 72 degrees. Charleston at 95. Dew point at 75. That's really impressive. So we're talking about a heat index here now of well over 112 degrees. So you have the heat advisory in the orange, and this is the extreme heat advisory right along the coast. Hard for you to see this, but it says... see here, where are we here? 89 down near off the coast here. I don't think it's 89 degrees. I think the thermometers. We wish it was 89. That's just not the case. But you'll notice it is hot, and we're going to continue this heat issue all the way through the end of the week now with this. And of course, so I wanted to talk about the heat, and we're also going to talk about the tropics because this is some big news about the tropics I want to share with you. So. The heat's going to be with us throughout the rest of the afternoon. We still have that cap on the atmosphere. In fact, let's get out here, get out of this, and show you this view. Let me make this a little bigger here. I'm going to put this in motion. You notice this is the satellite view, and as we go through time here, you can barely see it moving, but the clouds are moving. What you don't see are these billowing thunderheads that we normally get in the afternoon time with these thunderstorms. So it's again, I often do a food analogy, right? Because that's something I can relate to. If you have spaghetti and it's about ready to boil up, right? Just like the atmosphere would be boiling up the heat of the day. Well, if you put a lid on that boiling spaghetti, what happens? Everything goes down. And I know there's somebody out there saying, well, that's not always true, Tim. Sometimes it boils over and off the lid. Yes, and that can also happen in the atmosphere. That's when we have a cap and you've got some one or two little renegade storms that will break through that cap, just much like the spaghetti lid. And when that happens, you end up with a pretty vigorous, severe thunderstorm. That doesn't happen that often, but it does break the cap. We're also noticing a front that's draped right about here. Very, very weak cold front. It's brought nothing cool with it except drier air. Which sounds nice, but drier air heats up quickly, so that means this is going to be hotter. And the humidity may be down just a bit, but not really amount to much, really. What it has done, it has, though, dropped the chance of any heat advisory for the upstate. So the upstate, you're fine. You're not under heat advisory. It's still hot, humid, but you don't have to worry about the heat advisory. You certainly do to the Midlands, the PD, and then, of course, towards the coast. Notice the coast is crystal clear here. We don't even have a sea breeze bringing on the rain. So I think we're going to remain dry for tonight. Could there be an isolated shower? Absolutely, there could be. In this atmosphere, you can't rule something out. But I think that rain chance is less than 20%. Starting to try to bubble up here near Lancaster and Chesterfield. So from Lancaster to Chesterfield, possibly a shower. But again, I'm going to keep that rain chance for the entire state below 20%. And the same thing for tomorrow, for Wednesday. I think we're going to raise it up by the time we get to the Friday time frame. I think by Friday, maybe Thursday late afternoon. So let me get to this. Let's show you the weather models. We're going to start with tomorrow. This is the one that I'm going to hang my hat on. This is 11 o'clock tomorrow. Nothing's going on. Here is 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Maybe a shower or two from Charleston and Myrtle Beach. Tries to sneak inland by about 5 o'clock, really much to do about nothing. That's pretty much about it. Now we're into Thursday morning. Thursday's a little different. Just a better shot at showers around the coast. Thursday afternoon around 2 o'clock or so. By Thursday around 5, 1 or 2 little showers will pop. So I think Thursday certainly is a better day. Once we're into Friday morning, this is Friday morning at 5. Here's 11. And then here's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Much better shot at showers and storms. And we'll repeat this for Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday. All right, so I think that's our better shot at some showers. Looking way ahead. First off, I think next week will be cooler. Well, looking way ahead towards the end of August, first couple days of September, don't hold me to this because I'm going to tweak it, but I do think we'll have a much better shot at some cooler air that comes on down. Noticeably cooler. Not anything we're going to be wearing jackets or anything like that, but enough for you to go, whoa. Temperatures in the mid 80s for highs. That would be you're talking at this point, what, 15, almost 20 degrees cooler? And then the dew points would be much lower, so there'd be no heat index. So again, that's towards the end of August, early September. We'll tweak as we go on, and I think we're sort of headed in that direction. So let me show you this. This is from the National Hurricane Center. No tropical cyclone activity, expected during the next 7 days. I'm going to go on a limb here, and I put a 1 in front of that. I don't see anything happening. I really think that we may be headed towards, not that we're not going to get something, because I find that really hard to believe, even with an El Nino year that we're dealing with, that we just don't have anything. We had 2 named storms. Or 3. The 3, have we had 2 or 3? Maybe, I don't know. It's late for me, but I'll figure that out. But the point is, it doesn't matter. 2 or 3, still, that's nothing. And I don't really see anything bubbling up here within the next 7, 10, 17 days. I just don't see it. We've got too much wind shear, too much Saharan dust, and here we are headed smack dab towards the peak of hurricane season, which is September 10th is the peak before we start headed down. So, again, I don't see anything coming up our way. I just don't see it. So, not that it can't happen, but all the dynamics are there for it not to happen. And if we continue this trend, it will be a record hurricane season for lack thereof, for sure. So let me post this. I want to show you this. My friends at the National Weather Service in Greenville came up with this, and I thought this was a pretty interesting graphic since I promised you we talk about tropics going on. We often see this cone, right? And this is what we call the cone of uncertainty. So let me give you an idea of what this actually means. Let me get rid of my arrow here for the moment. This would be your tropical storm, hurricane, whatever it may be. And you'll notice that it starts off thin and then it gets really wide here. Why is that? What does that mean? This is where the thinner the cone is, right? That means the more certain we are where this storm is going. The wider it gets, that means we are uncertain. We take a center line path here. And by the way, typically when we do the center line path with this thing, it typically does stay within in the center part of the storm. But what it means is this could end up more towards the north here, towards the top of the cone, or towards the bottom. That's why it's uncertain. So why is there uncertainty with these things? Well, unlike when you have low pressure over land that's attached with cold fronts and warm fronts, those are more easily to forecast and predict where they're going. The very nature of how they move and how they interact with the atmosphere, there's a certainty to them. Not so with anything that forms over water, for a number of reasons. One, it's an entirely different system. This is a warm core system, so every storm system has a core, right? Think of it like an apple core. And inside a tropical system, it's warm, humid, and inviting from the surface to aloft, right? And this is how these storms get their energy. It's like breathing the warm air. It's like taking it like from the bottom, breathe it in and expel it out, right? So what we call it in weather, it's convergence down at the bottom and divergence at the top. So it's sort of like an athlete, these storms, right? They're breathing in the energy, the juice. And then at the top of it, they're exhaling it. And and the more juice they get, the more they can exhale, the stronger the storm gets. That's the deal with wind shear right now. Wind shear is cutting off this breathing apparatus at the top for these storms, right? So these storms, I can tell, they can breathe in, but they can't really exhale a lot because they have this wind shear. So they basically collapse on themselves. So these are warm core storms, meaning from the surface to aloft, they are warm. With a low pressure, because that's exactly what this is, it's just low pressure over water. Over land, it's a cold air top. So it's perhaps warm, humid at the bottom, but cold at the top. This is what fuels the fire for thunderstorms, and it's generally speaking, we have a better idea where those are going to go, just for number one, because of just a number of topography of the land, where it's at, winds aloft, all of that can steer the storm. When a storm is over water, there is no topography of the land. It's flat, and it's getting all of its energy and juice from the water. Right? It's taking all that moist, warm air. And there are steering currents, right, to where this thing can go based on where the high pressure or is off to the right, to the north, to the south. It doesn't, so all those take into effect. But when you're talking these storms, the uncertainty exactly where they're going to go, because of the fact that under the land to deal with, and a number of other factors, we have this cone of uncertainty. Sometimes, though, we can be really certain based on driving forces. So if there was perhaps high pressure to the north of this storm system and to the south, this would make this system make a beeline towards the coast. And this cone would be pretty certain. Why is that? Because the clockwise flow around this high pressure would sort of squeeze this storm in between the two and make it head towards the coast. So there's a lot of factors that go in here with this. So whenever you see this, here's a couple things you need to know. The probable forecast track of the center of the storm is up to about 5 days out from its current position. So this is basically 5 days out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? H stands for hurricane. M stands for major hurricane making landfall, and then S stands for tropical storm. So if you ever see that on a map, what does HMMS stand for? Doesn't stand for Her Majesty's ship. It stands for hurricane. So hurricane, major, then tropical storm. Once a storm makes its way on land, it's done. It's lost all the energy and juice which it gets from the water, and it starts to deteriorate. So once it's on land, now it could still be a hurricane once it makes its way on land and even inland further. Right? We saw that with Helene. Helene was a hurricane through central Georgia. Right? And then it became a tropical storm as it moved up towards closer to South Carolina. Then finally, it lost its tropical characteristics, but still was a major player. So it could still have the hurricane name attached to it once it's on land, but typically Helene was certainly an exception to the rule. Normally, once they get on land, they lose that moist environment from the waters. They then lose the hurricane name, and it just becomes low pressure. About 2/3 of the time, the center of the storm will remain in the cone. So this means that here's the cone, right? It's right in the center, typically where it is. So even though we have this path of uncertainty, more often than not, it does stay at the center. So what does this tell you? It tells you the size of the storm, hurricane, major, right? And this will continue to be finessed as we go along here. I think the National Hurricane Center has done a great job over the years of finessing the information that comes in. They've been spot on with their forecast, which has been great. So technology has certainly helped us with this. And now we talk about AI. AI is really getting involved in weather. Google AI, for example, is now trying to track these storms well ahead of time. In fact, Google AI has tried to jumpstart whether tropical formation will form days in advance before it even remotely appears likely that it would. And it's been somewhat successful. There's some tweaking that I think needs to go with that, but we're using AI in weather, again, just as a tool. Right? No meteorologist worth their salt will hang their hat on Google AI or any weather model and say, this is what's going to happen, because as meteorologists, you have to take into effect where you live, right? The topography of the land. We often talk about that. I mean, weather models for South Carolina don't take into account just a number of things for us. The fact that we have, Charleston's at sea level, and the mountains up in North Carolina, up near Greenville, right on the border there with North Carolina, Sassafras Mountain. That's 3,000 feet. So there's a lot of topography in the land. All of that will certainly make a difference in forecasting the weather. So when it comes to weather models, so when I show you a weather model, it's pretty much one that I would agree with, right? And then of course I always say make the exception to the rule. So back to the tropics, this is exactly what we look for. We look for consistency in the weather models. This gives you an idea when the next time you see this cone, what it actually means. The H, hurricane, major hurricane. S would be tropical storm. The cone means the storm could head further towards the north or further towards the south. Typically, it stays within line. And as far as the next storm is concerned, I don't see anything forming within at least the next 10 to 17 days. And that would place us pretty much right on par with the peak of hurricane season. It's wild. We've not seen this. This is part of El Nino. And what will happen is you're going to probably see this coming up on social media if you haven't already. The winter outlook for El Nino, right? There are people already starting to post that type of stuff. I'm not going to do that yet. Let's wait to see how this fleshes out. Let's get through at least summertime before we get into late fall and winter, right? Because we still have a little ways to go here. Once we get into that, I'll have a better idea what I think El Nino is going to do for us, and then I'll come up with our forecast for fall and winter time. But looking ahead, late August, early September again, we could have an opportunity where we see a front that actually comes on through and high pressure to the north and will push in some much more refreshing air. We're a couple weeks away from that, but hang in there. We are certainly done, I think, with the big time heat on the weekend. I think we'll have a reprieve of that with some showers and storms. So in the meantime, stay hydrated, try to stay indoors as much as possible, and we'll be back again tomorrow morning with our Wednesday update.